Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. North Carolina Republicans approved a new congressional map designed to protect their party's slim majority on the national level. The new districts favor GOP candidates in 11 of 14 districts, eliminating the state's only competitive district. WRAL's Will Doran is here to explain the change. Will, thanks for being here.
Nice talking to you, Grace.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of days there at the General Assembly. So let's start with this for people who are maybe just catching up to this now. How does this map give Republicans such an edge in our elections?
Yeah, that is a great question. So like you said, we have 14 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives here in North Carolina. We're the 10th biggest state in the country, and we have one of the biggest congressional delegations too. So, all eyes on us when it comes to issues like this. And right now, in those 14 seats, there are 10 seats that lean Republican, 3 seats that lean Democrat, and then 1 seat that is competitive. And this new map gets rid of that competitive seat. It turns it from a district that supported President Trump by about 3 percentage points in 2024 to one that would have supported him by double digits in 2024. So pretty solidly Republican seat. And so we would expect that looking ahead to 2026 and future elections, that this would probably lead to a 11-3 split in favor of the GOP in our congressional races.
Okay. And so what impacts would that have on the current representatives in our state, particularly in that Eastern Carolina region?
Right. So this only touches 2 districts statewide. They didn't redraw the whole map. They just swapped some territory between 2 districts. And the person they're targeting is Representative Don Davis. He's a Democrat who actually managed to win the district in 2024. I mentioned it supported Trump by about 3 percentage points, but voters there also voted for Don Davis, a Democrat, and he's a pretty moderate Democrat who votes with Republicans on issues like immigration, farming and agriculture topics, which obviously are big in Eastern North Carolina, and so voters there split their ticket. But that is probably going to be a pretty insurmountable challenge for him looking ahead. Like I said, going from Trump plus 3 to about Trump plus 11 or 12, it gets a lot tougher for even a moderate Democrat to convince moderate Republicans to support him. Representative Davis has said that he is still weighing his options, has not ruled out running again in 2026. And one thing that Republicans actually did is they drew Davis's own house out of his district. And a lot of people saw that as a pretty petty move because he lives in Greene County, which is a very tiny county. Not a whole lot of people live there. They didn't really need to touch Greene County at all in order to draw this map, but they did. And it just so happens to be where he lives. They put his house in the district that's held by Greg Murphy, who's the neighboring Republican in the district next to him. Now, you don't actually have to live in your district to run for Congress. That's a difference between the state legislature and the federal government. You just have to live anywhere in the state, and you can run for any congressional district you want. So that doesn't stop Davis, from running for that district. But he actually could run for either one of these districts now. Either if he wants to try again, either his old district, or current district in the northeastern part of the state, or the district represented by Greg Murphy right now, which includes Greenville and some other areas of Eastern North Carolina. And Representative Murphy, likewise, has said that he's going to run again, but he hasn't even decided which district he's going to run in because he does still live in his current district, but he's got a beach house in the Outer Banks that used to be in his district, but which is now in the new version of the district that is Don Davis's district, if people can keep up with all of that change. So, he's indicated that he might actually try to hop districts, and so we could have just a whole huge shakeup going on as people try to figure out where they're running, where they're not running. The filing deadline is in December, so we should know more by then.
Okay. So, that's a lot of impacts that's going to have here in our state and for voters. What are the implications on the national level if this map is used in 2026?
Yeah, well, Republicans here at the state legislature have been abundantly clear that specifically the reason why they are doing this is because Trump asked them to do it. And Trump is asking every Republican state that is able to gerrymander its maps even further to do so. And, Texas took him up on this. Utah and Missouri have also further gerrymandered their maps to try to draw some Democrats out. North Carolina's map was already pretty gerrymandered, but they decided that they could kind of squeeze this one extra seat out. And so they are doing it to help Trump. Now, of course, we've heard some Democratic states might decide to jump in and fight back, California being the biggest one, of course. They could probably kick, at least half a dozen Republicans, maybe more, out of Congress in California if they decide to really gerrymander their maps. They haven't done that yet. Republicans here in the state legislature keep saying that they're doing this because of California and they need to fight California. The fact is that hasn't actually happened, although it probably will. But yeah, this all just has to do with who is going to control Congress on January 1st, 2027, after next year's midterms. You need 218 seats for a majority in the U.S. House. Republicans right now have 219 seats. And so it's a very slim majority. The party that controls the White House almost always loses seats in Congress in midterm elections. And some political scientists had been predicting that Democrats could pick up, 10, 15, 20 plus seats next year, just looking at Trump's polling numbers, which have been falling in the last several months. And so Trump, recognizing that, has pushed states like us now here in North Carolina to try to gerrymander the maps further and stop Democrats from being able to flip control of the House. Obviously, if they were able to flip control of the House, they could impeach Trump again. They could block all of his legislative priorities. So he definitely wants Republicans to remain in control.
Okay, let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back. Okay, so Will, I would imagine that this new map and everything, you talked about the impacts that the positive impacts it will have for Republicans and therefore the negative impacts it would have for Democrats here in North Carolina. But I would imagine that Democrats aren't just taking this without a fight. So where does this leave North Carolina Democrats?
Yeah, that is a good question, Grace. Democrats don't really have the power to actually do anything about this. The maps are already law. And that's because here in North Carolina, our state constitution actually bans the governor from being able to veto anything related to redistricting. So, Democratic Governor Josh Stein is very, very much against these maps, but he is not allowed to veto them. And all Republicans needed was a simple majority in the state legislature to pass them. So they went ahead and did that, even though every single Democrat voted against it. They could have even lost several Republican votes, although they didn't. All of the Republicans voted against it, or voted for it. So now we're going to get lawsuits. And we haven't actually seen anybody sue yet, but we know that lawsuits are coming. That's no surprise. It'll just, we'll have to wait and see who exactly files the lawsuits, what exact arguments they make, whether they're in state court or federal court, all of those details, but those definitely are coming. And they're going to seek, obviously, to overturn this map, but even if they're not ultimately successful in doing that, will they be able to delay this from being used in 2026? Even if they don't eventually win, they could have at least a moderate victory by being able to push these back. So that is definitely the strategy here. And, in the meantime, also, we've seen, hundreds of people protesting here at the legislature, marching in Raleigh, coming to speak at committees. They had 2 days worth of public hearings on this, dozens of speakers. Literally every single person was opposed to this. Nobody came and supported it. So there is definitely an outpouring of anger, from the public, from Democrats about these maps. But we even heard from some people who describe themselves as Republicans or former Republicans who were opposing this. So, whether that equates to wins for Democrats in any sort of future elections obviously still remains to be seen. But for now, at least, these maps are law.
Right. And, given just for people who maybe haven't kept up with stuff like this as much, I mean, like you're saying, sort of the trajectory of where these lawsuits might go. We have a sense of that based on what's happened in prior elections, because it seems like almost every election leading up to it, there's, we're talking about a map that may or may not be used. So can you kind of explain, what we've seen in recent years in terms of maps and whether they've actually made it to being used or whether they were delayed, things like that?
Yeah, if people think that we do seem to be doing this before every election, they would be correct. This is the 7th congressional map that we've had now in the last 9 years. So it is just complete back and forth. If you don't know who represents you in Congress, it's almost a little hard to blame you for that, because these maps change so frequently, change around so much, who's in Congress, who's not, what district you're in. And the big question is actually a case that was just heard by the U.S. Supreme Court out of Louisiana. Right now, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 says that states like North Carolina with large black populations have to draw maps that ensure there'll be at least some black representation in their state. And what this map does is it targets one of our few black representatives by carving up a majority black area of eastern North Carolina into different districts. And so there are almost certainly going to be lawsuits calling this a racial gerrymander for doing that. And we've already heard plenty of arguments from state lawmakers, from protesters about that. Republicans, however, are feeling pretty confident that they will be able to survive those lawsuits, and that's because the Supreme Court, when they heard that Louisiana case recently, all of the conservative justices on the court seemed pretty inclined to more or less strike down, get rid of a key part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which would give Republicans much more leeway to gerrymander black representatives out of power in the future, like this map proposes to do here in North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, so it will be something to watch closely and probably will have a lot of impacts here. And sounds like, the future of this map, there's a lot that's going to go into it. I want to switch gears here. This vote on election maps comes as the General Assembly has not been able to reach a deal on the state budget. So where does that stand at this point?
Well, the state budget is essentially dead right now. Mm-hmm. Wednesday was the final day of votes for the State House, according to State House Speaker Destin Hall, which came as a surprise to quite a lot of people, including some of his Republican colleagues over in the state Senate. They've been hoping to negotiate a state budget, but both chambers really just are so far apart on the budget that they can't even figure out where to start negotiations. There are so many different things that they disagree on. What should even be up for negotiation, that he just said on Wednesday, you know what, we're done, we're through, we're going home for the holidays, we're going to go see our families for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and we'll come back sometime in 2026 and try to take another crack at the budget. And so, this has just really fueled heavy criticism of the legislature here. We heard this entire week from people who are saying, look at y'all here, redrawing this map, you're trying to grab power for yourself, but you can't even do your job. And, they're just underscoring that and saying, yes, we are unable to negotiate this budget right now for a variety of reasons. And that means that, in the meantime, state employees are not going to be able to get the raises that they've been promised. Both chambers of the legislature, the House and the Senate, agree that state employees need a raise. They both agree that there should be some sort of tax cut. They both agree that, we need to fully fund the state's Medicaid program, which right now is underfunded. But they don't agree on exactly how to accomplish each of those things, and so they're just not doing any of them at the moment. And it looks like, at least as of right now, things could change. They could decide to come back if they are able to have a moment where they can reach an agreement. But for now, it's going to be at least several more months, sometime in early 2026 at the earliest, when we get an answer to any of those questions, whether it's state employee raises or anything else in the state budget.
Okay. Well, Will, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. You can sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.